GM has announced layoffs of 3,300 employees in their EV and battery plants across Michigan, Ohio, Tennessee. But this shouldn't be a surprise to any of us. If you've been following the channel, you realize that layoffs like this are happening all over the place because AI and automation and a couple other factors are playing a part here. And in today's video, we're going to explore why these layoffs are happening and why, quite frankly, you should expect more. So thanks for subscribing to the channel, and let's get into the video. And by the way, if you stick around to the end, I've got a few, I think, very important questions that you should be asking yourself when it comes to being a guy who's trying to remain relevant, respected, and financially free in this quickly changing world. So let's listen to what the GM CEO, Mary Barra, says. What does the CEO say is the major factor in these firings? Well, she says it's in response to slower near-term EV adoption. And by the way, what I think is kind of funny about this is their EV sales hit a record of 67,000 sales in Q3. But that's not the end of the story. Hold on tight to that. We're going to get right back to why that's not the end of the story. Record-breaking EV sales and then firings immediately after. We're going to get there in a second. But who's getting fired? So 17,000 are indefinite layoffs, done, not coming back. 1,500 are temporary ones that are expected to return in mid-2026. And by the way, last week, there were 200 design engineers that were fired and in Detroit, and then 300 IT guys in Georgia that were fired. And you know, guys, we've been seeing this a lot. I think anyone who's in design, in IT is definitely concerned now that AI is playing a much more aggressive role in those types of job positions. I was speaking to a neighbor of mine the other day, and he's from India. He's here in the United States, working for a huge software company that you would know. If I said the name, you would know it. And I was like, so what do you think about AI and your job prospects? He's like, Mark, I'm just counting the days. One day I'm gonna get a call and they're gonna say, you're done. Yo, we're gonna be using AI for that role now. And I was like, well, what are you gonna do? He's like, well, I'll probably just move back to India. And I was like, you got a teenager. You're gonna move back to India with your teenager? He's probably not gonna be too into that. He's like, well, what can I do? I got family there. What can I do? You know, we make lemonade out of lemons, you know? At any rate, we're seeing these job firings all over the place. So these are mainly United Auto Workers that are involved, again, in EV assembly, battery production. There is some technical and IT staff as well as we covered. So that's who's being fired, right? It's these hourly guys who are on the line, and then other that we're seeing these more white collar in the office admin type of roles being laid off. But why is this happening? Because when I started to explore this story in more detail, I said, well, if GM's EV sales hit a record of 67,000 in Q3, 16.5% of the US market share, by the way, why are they firing people? You're hitting record growth. Why are the firings happening? So there's a couple things here. And what I think GM Mary Barra is really leaning on is the end of the federal EV tax credit. So up until September 30th, there was an EV tax credit of $7,500. So basically the US government was subsidizing batteries and EV vehicles. And now that that's over, they are projecting they're just not going to sell as many EVs, which makes sense. If I'm going to the auto dealership and say, hey, we'll give you $7,500 in your pocket if you buy an EV, I'm going to be much more likely to buy that. If you take that off the table, less likely to buy that. Okay, but what's interesting is what Mary says. So the GM stated that this was to adjust for recent changes and customer plant demand for battery and cell production. And in a shareholder letter, she wrote, this is interesting, with the evolving regulatory framework and the end of federal consumer incentives, it is now clear that near-term EV adoption will be lower than planned. That is why we are reassessing our EV capacity and manufacturing footprint. And to me, this seems like a really easy scapegoat, especially if you're not a fan of what Trump's doing. Very easy to say, hey, Trump ruined it. He did it. It's his fault. He went in and he cut our subsidies. So we're just going to have to lay people off. And to me, that's a pretty good argument. I think that makes sense. But I do not think that is the end of the story. And what I think is a major part of this is AI, robotics, and automation. And hear me out here. By the way, you're welcome to disagree. I get tons of great comments down below. I've read through thousands and thousands of comments over the past couple of weeks. And I think it's very good, very informed. You guys are very respectful. I appreciate that. But here is something that I'm seeing as a trend, okay? There's two kind of trends coming when these CEOs are looking at layoffs. A lot of times historically, they've been saying, well, it's because we're innovating and we are implementing new software and AI and we're cutting edge and we're very tech oriented. And that would be one reason that they would say that they're laying people off. It's for AI, it's for tech, right? We've seen Salesforce do this. I posted a video to this. Salesforce laid off 45% of their customer service staff for AI. And they were very explicit about that. They got a stock bump. But what we're seeing now is there is a consumer pushback. There's a big consumer pushback to this idea that we're going to fire people for robots. People don't like it. People do not like it at all, especially when it comes to data centers. I covered this in a video. I'll post a link to it here, where we're commenting on the guys from the All In podcast because they're saying all these data centers are getting pushed back. People are not excited about this AI like we thought it would be. Don't they realize that it's going to create so many new jobs? And by the way, I agree that there's going to be a long-term gain with this new technology, but short-term, very, very, very painful. In any event, what I think we're starting to see is companies are going to be firing people and not using the same reason of AI and automation. I think we're going to be seeing that here over the coming weeks, because I 1000% believe that GM is taking this opportunity to implement more robotics, and here's why. So GM has reported that they have a 25% productivity increase in pilot programs where they are running robotic process automation. So when they're rolling out more robotics, they're seeing more productivity. They're gonna lean into that, guys. Why wouldn't they? They're already using AI in battery pack assembly. They have this Ultium program that improves their thermal management. It reduces failure rates by 15%. And consulting company McKinsey says, hey, we are seeing that automation in manufacturing is likely to reduce costs by 20%. So the numbers from GM line up with more automation, more robotics, and we've covered why that's valuable in detail. They work 24/7, they're easier to control. Humans have all these different types of issues, sick days, et cetera, et cetera. But what I think is interesting, and I covered this in a video just a couple days ago, I'll post a link to it here. China is eating our lunch when it comes to robotics. They are eating our lunch. In last year, China added 295,000 new manufacturing robots. That's 10 times the amount of manufacturing robots that were added in China last year than in the US. And in that video, we also noted that the Ford CEO, Jim Farley, visited China, visited the manufacturing facilities, and he called their automated dark factories the most humbling manufacturing he's ever seen. He was stunned at what China's doing with robots in manufacturing. And in China, they have these dark factories, okay? And these dark factories basically don't have any humans. They call them dark factories because all the lights are off and the robots are just cranking. They're welding, they're piecing, they're moving product, they're doing all the manufacturing of these cars. Guys, China is eating America's lunch when it comes to EV production. In fact, China is now producing 70% of all EVs worldwide. They are eating our lunch. So do you think, here's the deal, guys, Ford, GM, see what they're doing over there. They are gonna use any excuse they can to lay off people so that they can start to implement these robotics at scale. Why would they not? Try to explain to me why they wouldn't. It's much easier to say it's Trump's fault. And by the way, I'm not gonna say that Trump has zero impact here. Obviously, removing a $7,500 tax credit plays an impact. Obviously, the tariffs play an impact. My uncle, who is a partner in a European appliance company, has said that the tariffs have completely crushed him. And this is the guy that I would expect to be more Republican leaning, but he's like, we got completely destroyed by these tariffs. Not happy. So I'm not gonna sit here and and make excuses. All that stuff plays an impact. But what I am saying is that outside of the political landscape, this technology landscape is absolutely the real deal. And so here's the questions. Thanks for sticking around here and kind of listening and understanding and being part of this community. Again, the comments below, if you have a great comment, if you bring facts, if you bring data, I will pin your comment. I've done it in the past, I'll do it in the future, because that's how we grow together, boys. That's how we grow together. So here's a couple questions that I want you to ask yourself and consider when you're going into the comments, okay? So the first one is, should taxpayers subsidize EV production for companies like GM and Ford? Should I be paying taxes? Because guys, somebody is paying for it, right? Somebody is paying for this. So if a company like GM and Ford are able to offer a $7,500 subsidy, that's coming out of our pockets. Should we be footing the bill for big companies like Ford and GM to produce and sell EV vehicles? That's a question to ask yourself. I'm not going to tell you the answer. You probably know my opinion on this off the rip, but should we be funneling cash as American taxpayers into GM, Ford, and other EV manufacturers, Tesla being another one, right? Should we be doing that? Should companies, here's the next question, should companies continue to strive to add robotics if it means employee displacement? If companies know they can, like GM, if a company like GM knows that they can increase their efficiency by 25% by adding in more robots, should they do it if they know that it's also going to lead to layoffs? Should they do it? Should they work for efficiency if it means layoffs? Okay, that's that question. And then the final question is, how can our auto workers prepare for all these various changes? How can because listen, like to me, the train is rolling, guys. The problems are here. There's no use crying over spilled milk. If you know that things are going to happen, what are you going to do? We're men. We don't sit on the sidelines and cry about our problems. As Tom Hanks said in the classic movie, A League of Their Own, there ain't no crying in baseball. And I kind of feel that way here. I'm not saying that you don't have the ability to say like, hey, this is a problem, I don't like it, that's fine. But there ain't no crying in baseball. If robotics and AI are happening, we got to step up. We got to figure it out. I'm a coach for my son's baseball team. He's a little guy, 6, and there's one boy on the team he's a good player. He makes good plays, hits well, catches well. Every single game, something will happen. Like he'll get tagged out or something like that, and he will start to cry. And I just feel like there's a lot of workers out there now that are in this kind of mentality. Well, I lost my job to AI. Well, I can't do anything about it. And I see this comment quite a bit. I'm sorry, guys, I'm going on a little bit of a rant here, but I see this comment quite a bit. Mark, AI and robotics are going to be better than humans at everything, so why should I even try? Guys, I think, and this is why I asked this question, how can auto workers prepare for these changes, for robotics, for AI? How can you prepare? I think it's an important question to ask because I believe that we can control our own destinies. I believe that you still have immense value as a human being, and I want to see you successful. I don't want to see you give up. Don't give up. There is plenty of opportunity out there. So those are the 3 questions. Should taxpayers subsidize EV production? Should companies implement AI and robotics if it means employee displacement? And how can employees prepare for these changes? How can they prepare and adjust? I want to hear your opinions. Put them in the comments below. And guys, if you like this video, make sure you've subscribed to the channel. I'm giving you a fresh video on AI and how it's impacting the workforce 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, on Sunday I rest. But if you like this video, you will be very interested in what happened at Chipotle this week. Their stock has cratered. It is completely cratered. It's down 45% this year. And why is that? Robots don't buy burritos, boys. Robots don't buy burritos. So as companies continue to fire and lay off for AI and automation and robotics, what they're going to find is that these robots don't buy burritos. So there's a lot of short-term pain coming, not just for everyday guys like you and me, but also for the big companies that are reliant on guys like you and me to feed our families. Check out that video. Very interesting what's happening over there. I'll see you there, boys. All right, peace.